Welcome. What is up? Welcome back to the Mixer. I am your host, RC. I'm joined by my co-host here, Jeff. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing good. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but it's been a fun few weeks at the very least. So
Yeah, can't wait to hear about your experience at the U.S. Grand Prix. But first things first, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. It's at FC Mixer. Our YouTube page, FC Mixer page, and really any social account at FC Mixer is the handle you want to look for. And subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You'll probably find it. If you can't, let me know. And we're $8 away from getting Twitter verified, which I am hyped for. But I got to hear. I mean, we got a lot of news to catch up on, but you went to the U.S. Grand Prix with your lovely better half. How was it?
it was a lot of fun. So as someone that's never been to like a full race before, I've been to like short track racing. If you're in San Diego, think of like Verona, right? I think Verona is a dirt track, or it used to be at least. But up here in Idaho, we have the Meridian Speedway, which is, I think it's a quarter mile. It's asphalt, but some entertaining races happen there. But like none of them are very long, right? Like you're talking like I think the longest race is like 40 laps, and we're talking like quarter mile laps, right? So they're driving like 10 miles. And it's not nearly the atmosphere. It's one day, really a couple hours. I will say about so first off, we did the Formula One experience setup. So like we went through the F1 website, which leads you through like F1 hospitality. And they have different packages you can buy. We did the starter package. It was the cheapest package you could get. It's by no means cheap though. I think it came out to with the hotel, travel to and from the hotel to the track, and the tickets for the 3.5 days came out to for us around $5,000.
Damn.
Yeah, so not super cheap, but it's our anniversary. We didn't really get a honeymoon, so we were kind of like, you know what, let's use this, right? We both are into Formula One, whatever. They make your life as easy as possible when you're there. They tell you so. If you don't get the travel pass, you have to find your own way to the track. That can be through an Uber. It can be driving your own car, like renting one, all that stuff. Parking is through the roof. If you think parking is bad, wherever you're at, whatever sporting event you go to, like we were on the bus driving past parking lots, and I'm telling you, it's like $80 minimum for the day. So it's worth it to get some sort of travel pass. And the F1 Experience one isn't the only one you can get, but they just make it nice and easy from your hotel. The other ones you kind of have to meet in a location. Um, but yeah, so first things first, like F1 Experience is the way to go, at least for me. Like you don't have any worries. They sent us a text Thursday morning that said, "Here's your schedule for the weekend," and there's different bus times, and then there's different times coming home. So like you can leave the hotel as early as 8 a.m. and get there for all the extra racing. It's kind of like a county fair as well. It appears, from what I've seen, a lot of the races take that kind of view. You might know a little more, but like at Coda, there's a whole section of like the track that it's by the straightaway on the backside that has like a couple rides, a bunch of food. Like really has that like fair type feel. Um, the other thing, the track is significantly bigger than I thought it was, even though I knew it was big. But like the first day we get there, Thursday, right? Or we got there Wednesday, but the first day you do anything is Thursday. We met out front of the hotel, hopped on the bus. They take us there, and immediately you walk in. You just walk through a metal detector. You don't get patted down or anything. You just kind of like show your pass. Walk in. They kind of herd everyone into a spot because we were going on track. We were getting a ride around the track, and then got to take pictures with. You could either take a picture with the champion, the drivers' champion trophy, or the team championship trophy.
Mm-hmm.
We did the team one because they didn't have a sign of which one was which. So we just got in, like the lines were about even, and we just got in the one line. It was the constructors trophy. I think you could have hopped right back in line and gone to the other side. We couldn't. We had to catch our bus out because
Yeah.
we had a specific time we had to leave at. But depending on what pass you get, Thursday changes, right? So you can stay longer, where they give you food. You kind of actually get to walk the pit lane because the teams are actually in their pits, right? Like we walked by and Pierre and Yuki and AlphaTauri were taking their team picture. Mercedes was practicing, looked like some pit stops and stuff. So was Red Bull. So that was really cool. The other thing is the ride around the track. So they basically put you on a flatbed, right? The one that the drivers are in usually, or a similar one when they do their little drive around the track.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Cattle
when we
car.
went, yeah, basically. And so when we went, we, so, you know, you're on the actual track. We went past Alex Palou and the McLaren team that he was with walking the track. Went past Max. He gave us a little wave. Went past, we went past
Anybody
Lance.
boo him?
No, nobody did. You know, it was lighthearted. It was fun. Like we all kind of cheered him. Uh, Lance was out there. We didn't realize that until we were like passing him because he was in near the stadium section, so it wasn't the easiest to see like too far ahead. Plus, our guides. So on these like whatever, you have guides, and so we had two of them, and they're both like youth driver, not youth drivers, but like younger drivers. Like one of them's doing F4 or F3 next year. The other one's doing Indy Lights, I think. I forget their names, but they're like 19 and 20, right? They're not old, but they have experience on the track. So they're kind of telling you what the drivers should be looking for or doing when you get to each turn and all that kind of stuff, right? So super cool. Then when you finish that, that's when you get the take the picture with the trophies. So that was day one, right? Thursday. Then we go home. We kind of just ate at the hotel. The other thing too, if you're going to like it, this is Texas specific, but I imagine it's most of the Grand Prix. Austin is a lot of fun to visit from everyone I've known that goes there and stuff. Like Austin as a city is really cool. Uh, if you plan to participate in the whole weekend for Formula One, you have no time to like check out the city. Like you're at the racetrack all day. So just understand that like when you, if you're going to go somewhere, you don't have time to really like check out where you're going. So if you want to do that, either get there early or stay late, one or the other. But so then Friday comes. Sam's not the biggest into like other forms of racing or other cars, so she didn't really want to get up at 8 o'clock and go to the track. So we took the 11 o'clock shuttle on Friday. That got us to the track around 11:30, 11:45. It really didn't take too long. I think the buses have their own way in, even though they kind of follow the same path everyone does. I believe they have their own lane, so it gets you in kind of quick. Then they park you right at the front, which is good or bad depending on how you view it. The front is, we were seated at turn 9, which I will say is kind of the one decision I made for the whole trip, and it was probably the best decision. Turn 9 is probably, you can see the most, I think, because you see them coming out of the S's. And then you see them getting ready for the back straight, and you can actually see the whole back straight. Now, as they get further towards the end of the back straight, it becomes harder, right? Because they're further away. But some people brought binoculars. I'm sure they could see everything. Like when Fernando went flying, you could see it. Obviously, you had to be looking for it, but it was not like far enough
Did
away.
you see it?
No, there was something else in front of us. People were going by. I think it might have been, I forget who it was, like Lando or someone. Maybe not. He might have been a little further ahead, but someone was coming by us and out of turn 9 and going down towards the final turn, turn 11, going onto the straight. So I was looking at that, and then I heard people in the crowd, and that's when I looked up, and you could see the crash. Like you could see the cars like messed up and pulled off to the side and all that. So I will say like turn 9, probably the best seats if you're not getting like in the paddock type area or on the start finish line. Um, but turn 9 from where you get dropped off with the buses is about a 45-minute walk, no matter which way
Yeah.
you go. And I suggest if you're going to walk around the track, you walk left from the entrance towards whatever the last turn is. It's like turn 20 or whatever. And go around the back way, basically the
Yeah.
opposite way the cars go around, because when you go towards turn 1,
You gotta go up that hill.
that's a hike. And I did not
Yeah.
realize how big that hill was until we got there. So yeah, it's not terrible, right? But it's just one of those like, just make your life easier. Go around the back way. But Friday was cool. We saw all the practice sessions. Friday also not super busy, right? There's still a lot of people there, but like our grandstand was far from full. So seating was pretty comfortable. You could get videos of kind of whatever you wanted, whoever you wanted. It's also much easier to see the numbers on the car in person. So like when I watch the race, I don't know how you watch it, but when I watch the race, if I want to know like who we're watching, if they haven't like set it yet or if they don't like put it on the screen, I usually look at the top of the car, right? Because they have the neon or they don't, which tells you it's either the first or second driver or whatever, right? When you're on the track or at the track, you can still use that, right? Like that's easy, but the numbers are actually really easy to see as they go by. So you don't have to depend on that. You just kind of have to know the guy's numbers, right? Which becomes fairly easy. Or, like if you know Lewis is 44 and you see 63 go by, well, that's obviously George, right? So um, that was interesting to me to know that. But Friday, pretty uneventful. We had a bunch of the rookies go, or not rookies, but like young drivers. It was kind of cool to see Logan Sargent out there. He might be on the grid next year if things break right for him in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, so like, practice is practice. The other thing I wanted to say, they do a pretty terrible job communicating what is currently happening on track if you can't see it. So it's not like there's no announcer, right? The way that you get at like a horse race or something like that, right? It's you have the announcers on the TV broadcast, and you can buy headphones that'll get you like those radio calls and stuff like that. We didn't do that. We didn't really care about that. But like for free practice 2, they were doing the tire test they were supposed to do in Suzuka the week before, right? And or 2 weeks, whatever. And none of that was communicated that was happening. So like a lot of us are watching, and we figured it out fairly quickly. But like there's a huge screen in front of us that they could have just said FP2 is a tire test or like whatever. They didn't. So you're kind of at a loss when you're looking at tires, and you can see the like red, white, yellow of the like soft, medium, hards. But when they come out with the tire test, there's no color on them really. So you're kind of confused for a second. Obviously we figured it out, and it's not a big deal anyway. It's FP2, but it just kind of like threw everyone off for a minute. It also, we were all wondering why it was an hour and a half session, and they don't put anything in like your program that says like, oh, the tire test is happening. It's just, this is an hour and a half, right? So a little bit weird, a little thrown off, but that was cool. Friday we also bought all our merchandise, and just advice, if you ever go to a Formula One race, buy your merchandise beforehand. Get it offline or online. Everything was about double the price that you see online. So I bought a Mercedes hat. Sam got a Ferrari one and a McLaren one. $80 each for hats.
Dang.
Got a shirt, a Mercedes shirt, $110. So uh, all those online, if you go on like the F1 shop or whatever, are pretty much 50% off of the price you pay at the track. At least they were for this one.
Hmm.
Saturday, a lot more fun. We didn't stay for Green Bay. That's the other thing too. When you get the packages, you get kind of like tickets to the concerts at night. We didn't stay for Green Day. We were kind of tired, just wanted to get home back to the hotel. So we did that. Saturday, got up. They get you there a little earlier Saturday, about an hour earlier. So we get there, and that's when I think I might have sent you or sent in the group chat a couple of videos of like the older cars or the smaller cars. Those are kind of cool to watch, right? It's different. You're not getting the like super professional Formula One guys, but you're getting professional racers, right? And most of them. And the cars are cool. They're a little bit louder than the Formula One cars actually, because I think someone was saying they might be V10s or something like that. I wasn't sure, but that is cool. Then we had FP3 and qualifying, and obviously qualifying is always fun. No matter where it is, no matter where you're watching, because that's the first thing that really matters, right? Qualifying was fun. We stayed for Ed Sheeran at the end of the night. He's a great show, by the way. If I don't even know if people like his music. I mean, obviously people like his music, but I mean, in general, great show. But qualifying is cool because you get kind of the TV broadcast on the big screen that they have in front, and then you obviously get to watch the cars go by. So that's always fun. One thing I noticed, and I don't know if you've seen it, I don't know if they showed it on the broadcast at all. The Williams cars, both of them seemed to smoke every time they got out of turn 9. So like there was, I don't know if it was dust on the track or what, but like they seemed to be the only car doing it. And I didn't see it mentioned anywhere, so I assume it wasn't an issue. But it just was interesting to me that there seemed like a puff of smoke every time they would come out of turn 9, and they were the only car doing it.
Like out of the exhaust, or couldn't tell.
I couldn't quite tell. I assumed it was out of the exhaust, but at first when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh shit, someone's engine's about to blow," right? Because like smoke is not a good thing coming from a car. But it went away, and they just kept driving. So I was like, "Oh, maybe it's normal, or they don't see any issues or something," right? But yeah, then Sunday, obviously race day. And even though it's race day, they still do other things on the track, right? Like there's other races happening. It's not just Formula One, which I thought for a long time that Formula One was like the only thing on track on Sundays, but it's not. They do. It's really cool when they do the driver parade, right? Or the drivers go out in as their teams. They do their cars, right? So like, all the teammates are together and they wave and all that.
I always thought the driver parade looked kind of lame, but
so
in person it's good.
Okay, super lame on TV. It's one of those things that like when you actually hear the crowd and stuff, it's kind of cool. Like we're in Texas, right next to Mexico. Checo's there. Every time Checo goes by, huge pops, right? Like huge. And just all that. Danny got a bunch of big like reactions as well. Max, every time he came on the track, first time by, got a huge reaction. Same with Lewis, same with Checo. The Ferrari guys got decent reactions, not anything crazy. The other thing I think is kind of cool is like everyone's first time by, you kind of get some sort of reaction. Even Latifi, who like no one really cares about, right? But I think that's kind of cool. It's like hey,
how slow did he look in person compared to the other drivers?
I mean, to be honest, it's really not that noticeable. Like,
yeah,
we're talking about this at the race, and like, you're talking about a second or two over a lap, right?
Yeah.
It's not a short lap, right? Like this is it's not Austria where 2 seconds is like 2% of the lap. This is 135, 140 lap. So 2 seconds is a lot, but it's not anything crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely. I don't know. There were some cars that looked slow, I would say. The Williams obviously looked slow. The Alfa Romeos did not look like they look beautiful on the track, but they did not look particularly fast.
It's the wheel fairings.
It
They
could
look
be.
slow on TV too.
Yeah. The top three look significantly better driving than all the other cars. Like, especially from Max and Lewis and Charles. And Carlos is close. But like when they take those S's and they get to turn 9 and then they turn down and go to the straight, like those cars are not moving at all. They are wherever it seems they want to be, like that's where they are. And it's really awesome to watch. Um, and you can definitely tell like differences in driver skill there, right? Is, getting the car to do exactly what you want. Also, it might have just been the first practice, but I noticed it seemed like Max was getting on the throttle faster than everyone else out of turn 9. How they like have to start to speed up to go down into the final corner. He seemed to get on throttle like halfway through the turn, whereas everyone else was kind of waiting until they were fully out of the turn. And I just noted, like, I noted that to myself. I don't know if there's any like data to back that up. Like I said, I just noticed it in FP1, but you could definitely hear like him pushing a little harder than almost everyone else. I also enjoyed that you could hear the shifts, right? Like you can hear them up and down shift. Now it's harder when there's multiple cars going by, but when you had one car go by and they go down into the essentially like the hairpin turn into the final straight, um, you can hear them downshift, and that's actually really cool hearing kind of how they do it. It seemed consensus seemed to be like brake and then a bunch of quick shifts, right? Um, you know, Obviously, I don't know how most guys are going to take that, but I found that pretty interesting. We did see Giovinazzi's spin out. We could see that from where we were. That was interesting. Um, and then, yeah, race day. We had no clue what happened in turn 1. Um, we so they have the race on the big screen in front of us, right? Like I said, you're getting essentially the TV broadcast, but we're all waiting for all the cars to come through the S's, right? Get through turns 5, 6, 7, get to where we can see you, kind of thing. We had no clue Sainz spun out, George spun him out, all that stuff, right? So we just see Max and Lewis, and it's just like, oh, I wonder what happened. And it took half the lap for us to even know that Carlos spun out.
Were you not looking at the monitor?
No, because it's the first lap. I was trying to get I was trying to get a video of all the cars coming by, all that stuff.
Videos. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's standing, so like we're all looking the same direction. No one's really paying attention to the big monitor at the moment. So we were all a little confused at first. Then, we looked, and then they showed the replay, and yeah, it was what it was. But watching the race in person, I will say that, and I think a lot of people kind of know it, but Lewis and Max just look different. I guess is really the best way to put it. I mean, Lewis kept that in the first stint. Lewis was between a second and 2 seconds behind Max for pretty much the whole first stint, and everybody else was dropping like crazy. George ended up pretty far back. Granted, I think he said there was some damage to the car or whatever, but like there was a pretty big gap between Lewis and whoever was in third, and it was noticeable. Every time they go around, that gap would grow, whereas like Max and Lewis kept about the same distance most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously cars matter a lot, but it really felt like they were the two best drivers out there. Um, Charles looked good. Sergio looks good. George looks good. Unfortunately, didn't get to see much of Carlos. Uh, but other than that, it's just kind of everyone. I'm not saying everyone looked the same, but depending on their car, you know, I don't know. Those two really looked different to me than everyone else, if that makes sense. Um, and then yeah, the race happened as it happened. We thought Max was gonna win fairly easy. Obviously, he did at the end, but the safety car, the crash, like all that stuff, made it an actual really exciting race. We were hoping that Charles could fight off Max a little bit more to allow Lewis to get the win, since Lewis is, I think, combined our favorite driver. We
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to see him get the win. Charles just, I don't know what, you might have a little more insight, having watched it on the TV broadcast, because I know they tend to give out a little more information, or you actually get some commentary on things. But it looked like Charles could hold off Max until he couldn't. Basically, like, I don't know if his tires gave out or what, but it was basically once Max got by, Charles seemed to lose pace. And so I assumed his tires were, having issues, because the Ferrari tends to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, he was
yeah,
probably pushing to keep him behind. And then once he got around him, you just change engine modes a little bit, dial it
yeah,
back.
yeah, and that makes sense. But overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. Leaving on race day, not fun. Took about an hour and a half to 2 hours. But race day is obviously the biggest day. Most people show up, right? But yeah, I mean, overall, it was well worth it to me.
Yeah.
We've already talked about going again.
Yeah.
Probably not every year, but we might even try to make it a destination thing and go to different tracks.
Yeah, I've been wanting to go to the Mexico one because it's much more the tickets are still expensive,
Yeah,
but um as far as finding a place to stay, it's much
yeah,
cheaper there, and then like public transportation in Mexico City especially is everywhere, and the track is right next to the airport, so you
oh
don't
yeah,
even really have to go anywhere.
yeah,
That
but
that's freaking awesome though. Yeah, I know one thing when I mean I've been to the track twice for two WEC races, and yeah, a lot of what you mentioned reminds me like here in the downshifts. There's a little more engine variety at the races I went to. Um, you're basically listening to the three different versions. Um, and what you said with the Williams and smoking out of turn 9, that I mean it, I wouldn't suspect it would be from the wheels or anything, unless they're running some funky suspension setting. My guess is the fuel flow had something to do with it, and whatever their fuel mix is, if they have um,
yeah,
like a little bit of oil in there or something. Because when I was at the WEC races, some of the cars, even with the same engines, um, they would it was almost like they backfire when they'd shift, and because it'd be spitting out flames, like you could see the flame
yeah,
coming out of the exhaust, and that was because of the fuel flow. Basically, they're running a higher fuel flow, and it was
yeah,
creating that kind of like the backfire pop when they would shift. So and did you see? I mean, I'm sure you saw some lockups and all that. One of the things that kind of tripped me out in person is seeing the smoke from the lockups. It just kind of like lingers for a while. It's kind of a trip. it's like, oh, there's this little smoke cloud for like 10 or 15 seconds before it
Yeah,
dissipates.
we saw a decent amount where we were at because especially Friday and Saturday, guys were pushing it or like turn 7, 8, 9, and we saw a few people almost like lose the rear end coming out of turn 9. We saw a couple lockups, nothing crazy. George actually, I think, once cut the corner because he locked up and he wasn't going to make the turn, so he just kind of cut it. And it was practice; it wasn't a big deal. Um, but yeah, George FP1 had a few issues there where he was maybe pushing a little too hard, trying to figure it out, and almost lost the car a few times. It was actually kind of cool to see because like you can see them almost learning in real time, right? Like it's like, oh, I came in this corner like this, and then went a little too hard, locked up, right? Then the very next time around, you'll see them take almost the same line, but they figure it out, right? Or they don't lock up, but maybe they almost lose the rear end. So then the next time around, you see them and it's like, oh, they took that one perfectly, right? And it's
Mhm.
kind of cool to see that stuff because you don't really get to see that on the broadcasts, right? Like they're not showing you the
Yeah.
same person at the same spot multiple times in a row. So that stuff is kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, glad you had a great time. Super jealous, and it was a good race to boot. Anything else on your trip, or do you
Not
want to
really.
move into some talk about the actual races?
Let's go talk about the races. Also, next time you got to go because it'd be a lot
Yeah,
more.
yeah. I mean, tickets go on sale for Vegas tomorrow, so I'm on the priority wait list. So um, I'm gonna try to get whatever the cheapest ticket is, and and yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed that I can lock a
Yeah,
ticket down.
I think they had like for Coda. I think there were some 3-day passes that were like just like grass seating, like basically just seat wherever you can find a spot. That were like $400 a day or something. So like $1,200 for the weekend, which isn't bad when you consider you're going to be there like 8 to 10 hours a day. So
Hmm. Yeah, they're saying for Vegas there's going to be $300 general admission packages.
nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I'll see. Um, maybe they have that posted somewhere. I need to actually look into that. But yeah, uh, wish your boy good luck for tomorrow's wait list. um, so yeah, I mean we missed a few races. I think Max has won them all. So there's that. He also locked down the title. I believe Red Bull has secured the title.
Yep.
Um, the constructors, and then we had the conclusion of the investigation to Red Bull and Aston Martin exceeding the cost cap from last year. Red Bull was given a $7 million fine, and they're reduced their wind tunnel hours by 10% of what they're allotted, which is effective immediately. Christian Horner, of course, not happy. Red Bull, not happy. I mean, nobody's really happy. I wouldn't think that Mercedes and Ferrari are super happy about it, nor McLaren. I suppose that's a sign of a good compromise. However, like I mean, these are rules. There's not, you know what I mean? It's not like two parties coming up with a punishment that they both should be happy on. So I think my takeaway from the whole situation is that the FIA needs to like really set some parameters as to what the teams can expect as far as punishment goes if they exceed certain thresholds. And yeah, but I mean, what's your take on the whole situation?
um, I'm kind of with Zach Brown on this one. Uh, 2020 was a test year for the cost cap, right? Like I don't believe there was any penalty for going over, but it was like the first year that they had the outlines and they were supposed to stay within it. But, there was a trial run because of COVID. Um, so there was no excuse. And when I believe it's been adjusted to where essentially not, I think 9 out of 10 teams, I don't even know if they count Aston Martin as going over because I think it was really procedural or whatever. Like it was more of like
Mm-hmm.
how they did something. But when basically 9 out of 10 teams don't break the rule, and then the one that did break the rule is the one that wins, it's just really not a good look. And I've read a lot of different things about this, about how much they went over, how they went over, and one of the breakdowns I saw said that if a tax credit had been applied properly, they would have, instead of being over almost $2 million, they would have only been over like $400,000 or whatever. Um, but over is over, right? Like there's a limit, and when you go over, there should be a punishment. Um, I don't know if the punishment is fair or not. I think we'll see. We'll really see how much kind of wind tunnel time matters to an extent. Obviously, it matters a lot, but is docking them enough at this point to influence where they finish, right? Because you can make the case, and I think you can make a very strong case, that no matter how much they went over, they influenced the outcome of last year and this year by going over. Um, and if their results next year don't get influenced by the penalties, and let's say Max wins his third in a row and Red Bull takes the constructors again, and it's not close again, well, then your penalty almost did nothing, right? Other than the $7 million fine. And so I think that, if I'm Mercedes, Ferrari, even McLaren, even like all the other teams, I'd be really irritated by this. And obviously, we won't know the actual outcome of the penalties until next year, and see if Mercedes and Ferrari can get closer. It looks like Mercedes will figure something out at the very least. Ferrari, weirdly, has gotten further away as the year goes on. Um, but yeah, I mean, if it's just the same thing next year where Max dominates and Red Bull dominates, then there's really no punishment, and Red Bull gets off scot free, um, essentially, right? So that's kind of my thought on it. I'm with you. I think they need to have very strict rules for um, breaking rules. Is really all that
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I'm curious if they're going to go over this year too. I would suspect not, but I mean, like you said, there's no real excuse, and I've seen a few different explanations to where they went over the cost cap, and of course, we don't get to see like an itemized breakdown of all the teams. But I mean, it's just like if you, with any budget, uh, like the last thing that is maybe more than you had budgeted goes over. Well, like what about like the hundreds of other things that you spent? So I would love to see like in what area they went over compared to other
Yeah.
teams. I've heard it say, oh, it was catering, it was Adrian Newey's contract, the thing you said about a tax credit, and it's just either way. I mean, it's almost you overfilled the bucket, you
Yeah.
know. So so, and like you said, with Red Bull winning, it's hard not to make that connection. And I suspect that if Red Bull didn't win the title, um, that they would have taken points. But since Max won the title, taking a title away like retrospectively just doesn't. Yeah, I mean it's kind
Well,
of
I mean,
it.
we knew when the decision on Massey came out, like they weren't doing anything to take the title away. They basically said Massey fucked up the end of the race. He lost his job,
Yeah,
and they still didn't reverse the result. So like they definitely weren't doing it for a minor overspend. based on the rules.
Yeah, I don't know what needs to be done with the FIA, but man, they're a mess. They're a real mess right now. Yeah, I could if stuff continues like this, I can see the Liberty Media disassociating with the FIA, but the problem is like a lot of the tracks rely on the certification and like the super licenses too, so they'd have to redo everything. Not like, it wouldn't. I can't, I'm trying to think of an analogy. um yeah, I mean, it'd basically be like the XFL or
Yeah.
something. You'd have to start it all over, um get new contracts with venues, and yeah, just come up with a whole system from the ground up. And anyway, so it's probably not going to happen, but they gotta figure it out. um we had some controversy, well, not really controversy, at the last race, the Mexican Grand Prix, which is, I mean, 10 out of 10 atmosphere, like 3 out of 10 as far as the track goes. Unfortunately, it's pretty boring despite the high speeds. Yeah, it needs a little bit of a redesign. But it look I swear to fucking God, dude, if I hear this is Mercedes' best chance to win all season, either a quote from a driver or a team principal or analyst, it's like, yeah, I've heard that like 5 different times this year, and surprise, they haven't won it. But I mean, they looked like they had a shot for real. This time it was for real. Russell qualified second, Hamilton qualified third. Russell got a bad start. And on top of that, both Mercedes opted to start on the mediums while most of the other front runners were on the soft. Most importantly, Max Verstappen on the soft tire. The analysts or the broadcast thought it was going to be a two-stop race. It seemed like if you ran the softs, most other teams thought it was going to be a two-stop race, but the track rubbered in, clouds cooled the track down, and Max was able to extend his soft tires and then had basically no degradation on the mediums in his second stint. So it ended up being a very boring race. We did see Daniel Ricciardo start on mediums, run long, and then switch to softs. And what did he finish? 7th, 8th, something like that.
7th.
Yeah, so he finished like best of the rest and did a really good job. So that was good to see. But I mean, what are your thoughts on what happened at the Mexican Grand Prix and the tire strategies?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say now that Mercedes messed up their tire strategy, but everything I read before the race, the night before, was that everyone thought it was going to be a two-stop race. I think that from what I read, even Red Bull initially, like they wanted Max on the softs to try to make sure he stayed in front at the start, but they kind of expected him to have to come in early and then go to hards and then maybe back then to mediums or something to end it. But they found that the softs just lasted, right? I think he went to lap 20 something with them. And then the mediums, as you said, he showed almost no degradation on those. I think he was putting in like mid 22s for the whole race on the medium.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I think that Mercedes, at least with one of the two, probably George, but you probably could have done it with Lewis, should have kept them out significantly longer than they did. George was asking to stay out longer. He said he felt really good in the car. They should have essentially tried the Danny Rick strategy. Just stay out long and then throw the softs on for the last 20 laps and see where you can end up.
Mm-hmm.
Danny at the end of the race was going like 2 seconds faster than I think at one point he was catching was it Alonso and Ocon? He like 3 seconds per lap for a couple laps to like catch up to them. Like it was insane. Now would George have been able to do that to like Sergio, for example? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe he's only a second and a half faster, and it doesn't really work out. But it would have been worth a shot. The other thing I think they could have done is, and I don't know if you get this impression, but I get the impression that Lewis doesn't push Max very hard in those type of situations. So like Lewis had the harder tire. He's on the mediums. Max is on the softs. Lewis seemed content to stay 1 to 1.5 seconds behind. I don't know if it was trying to make his tires last or whatever, but I think they maybe could have taken advantage of the weather, the cloud cover, the cooler temperatures than expected by pushing Max a little harder, trying to force him to use up those softs a little bit quicker and alter Red Bull's strategy. And then they could have just matched whatever Red Bull did at that point, right? But I thought, Lewis didn't go long, and then in not going long gives up the advantage of using the harder tire. And the other way you can use that advantage is by just pushing harder for longer, right? Because the tire will last longer. So I don't know if your thoughts on that. I don't know if I'm completely off base. Obviously, this is looking back at it in hindsight. But it felt like Mercedes was really kind of lost on Sunday. They tried to go to the hards. I will say they were one of the first teams to do it, so I won't really blame them too much. Like it wasn't a Hungary situation where Ferrari put Leclerc on the hards even after Alonso had been out for like 5 laps, saying how bad they were. Merck was one of the first teams, if not the first team, to do it, but they just needed to try something different. I applaud them trying it, but it didn't work.
Yeah. I don't know if the gap was due to Hamilton not pushing or trying to, as much as it was Max being able to maintain it himself. It's tough to know, and without knowing the Mercedes strategy, they might have been telling Lewis to hang back, banking on the fact that they were going to make one less stop than the Red Bulls. So I mean, there's a lot of variables. I think what it comes down to is Mercedes wasn't in a position to deviate from their strategy that they came up with entering the race, and Red Bull had the benefit. Max had the benefit of being in the front, being the championship leader.
Right.
And he had the luxury because Lewis had and George had to worry about track position if they were to run long and then suddenly need to stop. They would be coming out behind some of the like upper midfielders. So in order to consolidate like second and what did they end up finishing, second and fourth or fifth? Yeah. In order to consolidate those positions, they had to, that they couldn't deviate too far from their original strategy. It's just another example, though, of Red Bull making the right call. And I mean, ultimately, it seemed like Ricardo had the best strategy for the race, and he just kind of fell into it. So I don't know how much of that is because Red Bull is able to make these adjustments on the fly, and how much of it is the fact that they're just in the position to where they have that luxury. So I mean, it keeps happening over and over again, but then again, Red Bull's at the front
Right.
most of the time. But I mean, they've even jumped on it with Ferrari too. So it's tough to say, but the body of work that Red Bull and their race strategist, I can't remember her name, come up with. Yeah. I mean, you got to tip your cap, and no other team has been able to execute something to beat them yet. I mean, when Ferrari won, they won because they were the better car. They didn't win because of strategy. So,
Right.
so yeah, I mean, it's just Red Bull is a well oiled and well funded team. Rest in peace. They're the founder of Red Bull. What was his name?
Dietrich, right?
Dietrich Maastricht.
Something like that.
Maastricht. Yeah. Not only responsible for the Formula One team, but I mean all the Red Bull branding at sports events. He really um he filled in a gap that a lot of the big tobacco companies left as far as sponsorship and kind of non-mainstream sports. So yeah, just got to tip your cap to him. Anything else on F1 or the race? We got Brazil. Is it this weekend?
I don't remember. I'll look it up.
I'm going to Vegas this weekend. Supposedly there's going to be some sort of F1 demo there. I didn't realize. I think the SEMA Auto Show is there in Vegas too.
Nice.
So that's going to be interesting. I'm there for a kid's birthday party, but I have established that I should be able to sneak away for the Formula One event. Hopefully it's not too big of a madhouse, but yeah. So hopefully something comes out of that.
Brazil is in
What about
2 weeks.
NFL? 2 weeks. Okay. What about NFL? We got the what is it? We in on a crash course for a Bills Eagles Super Bowl. We had somewhat of a crazy trade deadline and lots of injuries everywhere. Any thoughts on the NFL landscape at the moment, Jeff?
I mean, what can you say? It's kind of wild, which is why everyone likes the NFL, right? I think that the Eagles, to me, look like the best team in the NFL. They're the only team I've watched that doesn't have glaringly obvious like issues. Um, and whatever you think of Jalen Hurts, he's been incredibly consistent the last 2 years. I think that the Bills are probably the second best team, if not the best team there. Um, my only issue with the Bills is at times Josh gets wild. We've seen that a few times this year. He might struggle a little bit. Obviously, still putting up huge fantasy numbers, but the team tends to struggle when he struggles. Um, and then I'm still on the Chiefs. I think they're up there as well. I mean, their last game out, they had a bye this last week. Their last game out, they put up 40 plus, and it looked easy. So their defense is decent. But yeah, with so many injuries this year, it's been the Bengals don't look great. Jamar's out for another 4 weeks or something like that minimum probably. The Rams have looked pretty terrible. I don't know. I think the 49ers might be dangerous with McCaffrey now. He brings an added dimension there that they haven't really had in a while. They've had to piece together. So, but right now, I would say it's Eagles, Bills, and then probably the Chiefs right behind those two teams.
Tough to argue with that. Interestingly, maybe the two Super Bowl favorites have decent competition within their own division. The Bills with the Dolphins, and the Eagles with a healthy Dak on Dallas. The Cowboys, they have a solid defense, and yeah, with Dak there, they can probably turn things around. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parity this year. I don't think those two teams are so far and above the the teams in their division and the other ones in the conference. So it should be fun down the stretch. We finally got some scoring. The scoring was down up until last week. I mean, it still might be down overall, but last week seemed like a high scoring week. So yeah, I mean, I I don't know. It felt kind of off watching the season at the start for whatever reason, but yeah, now I'm getting back in. I mean, I still watch just as much as usual. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was ugly football. And like every single Charger relevant player being hurt. That's always fun.
Yeah.
What can you do? They're the freaking Chargers. Anything else you got before we get out of here?
That's all I got.
All right. Good luck in your fantasy football matchups. And yeah, let's get this pumpernickel. PF Chang's time.
Let's do it.
Toodaloo.